Madam President, I rise again to talk about the crisis at our southern border and the need for strong, unified action to deal with it. The need to come together around a common sense enforcement approach that undoubtedly will need some additional resources, but also clearly demands some changes to the law, changes to current law, so that we may quickly deal with the need to deport folks coming over our Mexican border illegally, quickly deport them to their home country. In the case of alien children, quickly reunite them with their families, take them out of the hands of criminal gangs, and reunite them with their families in their home countries. That is an obvious need in the eyes of the American people. I think the vast majority of Americans realize that we need that sort of approach that starts with enforcement, much better enforcement of our southern border. And yes, if people do get across, quickly deal with their situations and quickly and effectively deport them. That's the approach we need. Sadly, Madam President, that's not what the President has proposed. That's not what Harry Reid is even allowing us to vote on the Senate floor. You know, for a couple of weeks at least after this crisis hit the first page of the newspaper, President Obama constantly pointed to those parts of the law that he said tie his hands in terms of quickly, effectively deporting some of these individuals. He pointed to the 2008 changes of the law over and over and over again. The problem is, a couple weeks after that, when he actually sent up a proposal to Congress to deal with the crisis, that talk was gone. Mention of that was gone. There was no suggestion of any change in the law in that regard or any other regard. The only request he made was money, $3.7 billion, a huge amount of additional money, the great majority of it to feed and house and relocate these illegal aliens, including unaccompanied alien children, within our own country. Now, Madam President, the problem with that is that's going to encourage this flow. That's going to encourage this problem to grow. It's not going to discourage it. It's not going to end it. So we need that comprehensive approach, including necessary changes to the law and enforcement to quickly deport these folks to their home countries and reunite them with their families. In the absence of the President leading in that regard, I developed my own legislation. I introduced it in the Senate, and I've now introduced it as a floor amendment to this spending bill, which Senator Reid is bringing to the Senate floor. It would change those aspects of the law we need to change to streamline the process and allow us to quickly deport individuals within 72 hours back to be safely reunited with their families in their home country. That's the only thing that will stem this increasing tide, this increasing flow, and this increasing problem. Now, there's also been a lot of debate about resources necessary, increased spending necessary, and clearly that is necessary. But before we pass the President's proposal, we need to marry it with these enforcement measures, marry it with these changes to the law, and we need to be paying for that enforcement and deportation, not simply paying to feed and house these illegal aliens within the country, to actually relocate them to other places within our country with no foreseeable end in sight. We can't do that. If we get it right with the right enforcement measures, I also have suggestions about how we can help pay for whatever increased enforcement, border security, and quick deportations are going on. And I have two suggestions in particular. These are two specific bills I've introduced some time ago in the U.S. Senate, and this week I've introduced each of these bills as amendments to the spending bill Harry Reid is bringing to the Senate floor. One is S. 1176, That's the freestanding bill, but I've also introduced it as a Senate floor amendment, the Remittance Status Verification Act of 2013. Now, what's this about? This is about remittances by illegal aliens in this country sending money back to family and others in their home country. The GAO, not a partisan organization, respected, nonpartisan entity, the GAO has previously noted that the United States was the largest remittance-sending country in the world, with the majority of funds sent to Latin America and the Caribbean, and substantial amounts also sent to Asia and Africa. In the past 10 years, the total number of international remittances have increased by about 8% in 2013 alone, or expected to grow 10.1% in 2014, 10.7% in 2015. So it's reaching an astronomical number. In 2015, it'll be over $500 billion. Now, if folks are working in this country legally, they're here legally, that's fine. We don't want to hassle them. We don't want to make any problems with that. But clearly, a significant portion of the folks we're talking about are here illegally and working illegally. That's wrong, and we need legislation I'm proposing to fix that situation with 4 important goals in mind. First of all, we need to see if folks who are sending these remittances are here legally. Second, we need to ensure U.S. taxpayer fairness. Third, we need to address inaccurate U.S. data on remittances and get and collect all the full facts. And fourth, we need to make sure that illegals receiving U.S. benefits see if they're remitting higher amounts abroad. My legislation would address all of these goals, and fundamentally, it would get a handle on the situation and make sure that those who are not in this country illegally paid a substantial fee, and then that was used on border security and other immigration enforcement. That could grow a significant amount of revenue specifically dedicated to border and other enforcement. Second proposal I have is in the form of S-2632. Excuse me, wrong number. It's in the form of other legislation, freestanding legislation, which I've also introduced this week as a Senate floor amendment for the supplemental appropriations bill. It's about child tax credits. This amendment addresses a clear loophole in the IRS code that allows illegal aliens to access income tax-based benefits such as the child tax credit and the additional child tax credit. According to the Treasury Department Inspector General, again, this is not some partisan Republican source, it's the Obama administration Treasury Inspector General. They issued a report recently that said $4.2 billion with a B each year is sent to folks probably here illegally who do not qualify under these programs, but we send them a check, a refundable tax credit nonetheless, $4.2 billion. Now, as the Inspector General himself has said, there's a pretty simple way to fix this by requiring a valid Social Security number or other appropriate identification number. This approach is straightforward, it is simple, and it will fix the problem. And it would cut down $4.2 billion with a B of spending that we're sending improperly, illegally, to largely illegal aliens and illegal alien families. We can use those resources instead on enforcement. Those are simply 2 specific suggestions that I have filed this week in the form of Senate floor amendments that could help raise the additional resources we need to address this issue. But again, I want to emphasize, we need to do a number of things, and it's not all throw money at the situation, particularly when most of that money under President Obama's proposal is simply to house and feed these folks illegally in the country and actually distribute them throughout the country for an indefinite period of time. Fundamentally, we need to marry that up with real enforcement measures, including those addressed and listed in my bill. I hope we take that approach. I hope Senator Reid allows that debate, allows those votes. Right now, he's laying across the tracks. The only thing he's allowing a vote on is this spending measure. Just give the president largely a blank check. That won't solve the problem. That's not the correct response. We need to do all of the things, broadly speaking, I've laid out. And I hope we do that. I hope we come together, as in fact the American people have, around that common sense approach, that clear consensus. Thank you, Madam President. With that, I relinquish the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.